On a brutal winter night in a windswept frontier town, a widowed young mother sits forgotten in a train depot, her infant trembling against her chest. The townsfolk look away, but one man notices. A quiet rancher with grief in his eyes and kindness in his hands. His simple words, "Ma'am, come in out of the cold," will change all three of their lives. The depot was not a building so much as a box with a roof. Wind clawed through the warped planks, slicing through cloth and bone alike. Nora Hayes hunched on the wooden bench, clutching the bundle against her chest the way a drowning woman clutches driftwood. Samuel breathed in ragged, quick little gasps, his tiny cheeks blotched red from the cold. Her gloveless fingers shook as she adjusted the blanket around him. She didn't have any more wraps. She had sold them for passage 2 towns back, but she whispered nonsense sounds anyway, as if her voice might create warmth where fabric could not. A conductor strode past without looking at her. A pair of ranch hands stamped snow off their boots and laughed about whiskey thawing their lungs. Someone stepped around her carefully, as though she were a stain on the floorboards instead of a living woman with a shivering child. If you're listening to this, please pause and help support our channel now. Tap like. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Leave a comment. Even one word like safe or hope helps us grow. Subscribe so you never miss another Western romance. Nora tucked her chin into Samuel's blanket, her lips brushing his downy hair. "Just a little longer, sweetheart," she murmured. "Someone will come. There'll be a later train. There has to be." Her voice came out thin and brittle. She didn't know who she was lying to, him, the wind, or herself. The baby stirred and whimpered, a tiny sound that sounded too much like surrender. Nora pressed him closer, trying to share the last scraps of her body heat. Her boots, cracked at the seams, did little to hold back the icy bite coming through the slat floor. Her toes burned, then slowly went numb. Snow hammered against the depot windows harder now. The storm had turned from nuisance to threat, and the lamps flickered under the gusts. The last train of the night had already rolled through 3 hours ago. No one else waited with her now. She was the final problem this station didn't want. The depot door heaved open, wind dragging in behind a tall figure dusted with snow. He shook off his hat, then the shoulders of his sheepskin coat. A scent of cold leather and pine came with him. He wasn't in a hurry. He moved like a man who lived without clocks. Steady, deliberate, certain. His gaze swept the depot once, then stopped. On her. Nora stiffened, tightening her hold on Samuel. The infant made a small bleeding cry, and she rocked him instinctively. The man hesitated only a moment, as if weighing something invisible, then walked toward her with calm purpose. He stopped a respectful distance away. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and even, "that little one of yours is shaking like a leaf. You'll freeze sitting out here." She swallowed, throat trembling. Pride was her last possession, and its edges were sharp. "We're waiting for the next train," she said. "We're fine." He glanced at the schedule nailed crooked on the wall. "No trains till morning," he said gently. "And the stove here's run out of coal." She knew that. She had tried to warm her hands at it 2 hours ago, only to find thin, gray ash in the grate. Still she lied. "We're fine." The man didn't argue. He simply removed his gloves, tucking them into his coat pocket, and knelt slowly in front of her so his height wouldn't loom. "Name's Jameson Cole," he said. "I run a ranch out past the ridge. Got a fire burning. Kitchen's warm. You and the baby can come in out of the cold." Something in his tone, calm, unforced, free of pity, cracked the brittle ice inside her. "No," she whispered. "This isn't your problem." "It is," he replied, "because I'm standing here and I see it." He extended a hand, not to grab, not to pull, just to offer. Nora stared at his palm. His fingers were thick, nicked with old scars. Working hands, strong hands, but the way he held them, open, waiting, patient, felt safer than anything she had seen in months. Samuel whimpered again, a sound like surrender. Her vision blurred. She placed her hand in his. It was warm. He didn't lift her like baggage. He helped her rise, careful as a man steadying a colt new to legs. Her knees wobbled, and her breathing hitched. She didn't remember the last time someone had touched her without taking something. Jameson shrugged off his coat and draped it around her shoulders gently. The lining was warm, smelling of smoke, wool, and something clean. "You'll need this more than I will," he said. "But your arms." "I've known cold all my life," he said. "Ranch hand winter is a mean tutor. You learn fast. Come on." He guided her out of the depot, shielding Samuel from the wind with the folded edge of the coat. Snow stung her eyes and nose, but the shock of cold outside was less painful than the emptiness she had just left. A horse waited near the hitching post, a broad-shouldered bay with a patient posture and reins dusted in frost. Nora hesitated. I can't ride. Not with him." Jameson stepped sideways so she could see the saddle clearly. A thick wool blanket had been tied around the back. "I'll take the reins," he said. "You'll sit behind me. There's room enough for both of you." She looked at the bay's steaming breath, then at the child in her arms. The decision wasn't hers. It belonged to the cold. She nodded once. Jameson mounted first, steady and sure, then offered his hand again. When she tried to climb on her own, he didn't scold, but he did slide one arm beneath her knees and lift her in a gentle, surprising motion. "Not a rescue. A welcome. Easy now," he murmured, settling her behind him, her baby nestled between them. And for the first time in months, the wind was no longer the loudest sound in her life. Jameson's horse cut through the storm with the confidence of an animal that knew every inch of land beneath it. Nora pressed her cheek lightly to the heavy wool of Jameson's coat, using his body as a windbreak. Samuel slept against her chest, his breathing soft and steady. That was when she realized her heart beat differently now. Not from fear or desperation, but from something new and terrifying. Hope. They reached a break in the snow-lit hills, and Nora saw warm pinpricks of light. Lanterns. A chimney puffing a slow ribbon of smoke. Fences carefully mended, not abandoned. Life. Jameson slowed the horse. "Welcome to Cole Ranch," he said softly, as though afraid a louder tone might spook her. The sight of it hit her like a prayer answered too late. She nearly sobbed, but she swallowed the sound. She had learned not to cry where others could see. Jameson dismounted, then turned and lifted her down with the same gentle surety he had shown at the station. "You're safe now," he said, and this time she believed him. A door swung open. Warm, golden light spilled onto the porch. A middle-aged woman with rolled-up sleeves and iron-gray hair stepped into the frame. She had the posture of someone who could whip butter, cattle, and men into shape without raising her voice. "Jameson Cole," she barked. "Why in heaven's name are you?" She stopped cold when she saw the bundle in Nora's arms. "Oh," she said, softer now. "Oh, honey, come inside." She didn't ask names first. She didn't ask questions. She stepped aside and let Nora pass. Inside was heat and salt and bread. Inside was the smell of stew. Inside was a fire that did not demand anything of her. Inside felt like the opposite of the depot. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around Nora so completely her knees nearly gave way. Firelight moved over plank walls and a stone hearth, over a long scarred table and a row of hooks with coats and hats hanging in familiar shapes. The gray-haired woman shut the door briskly against the wind, then turned, hands on her hips. "Well," she said, eyes scanning Nora from bonnet to worn boots. "I'm May Cole. I cook, clean, and yell when yelling's needed. You look about 3 breaths from falling over. Sit." She pointed toward a chair near the fire. Her voice left no room for argument, but there was no meanness in it, only the firm care of someone used to keeping people alive through winters. Nora moved as directed, lowering herself carefully. Baby Samuel stirred, lips mouthing in his sleep. May's expression softened at the sight. "And who's this little bundle?" she asked, already reaching for another log to place on the fire. "Samuel," Nora said quietly. "My son." "Samuel," May repeated, as if trying the name on her tongue. "Good name. Solid." like a man who grows into his boots. She grabbed a folded quilt from the back of the couch and draped it over Nora's knees, tucking it in with the same practiced motion she might use to snug a saddle blanket tight. "You got any feeling left in your toes?" May asked. "Some," Nora lied. May snorted. "We're going to get along fine," she said. "Lies don't sit right in my kitchen either." She raised her voice slightly. "Jameson, kettle." From the doorway to the mudroom, Jameson's rumbling baritone answered, "Already on." He moved lightly for such a big man, boots thudding softly across the floor as he went toward the stove. He shrugged out of his vest and hung his hat, revealing musk-dark hair and a face carved in lines of quiet and restraint. He caught Nora watching him and gave a brief nod, as if to say, "You're not intruding. You're here because I chose this." "Tea first," May declared. "Then stew. Then questions." "I don't want to be in anyone's way," Nora murmured. May's brows rose. "You're flesh and bone and heartbeat, not a sack of feed," she said. "You being here tonight is the Lord's business. I just set the table." Nora's eyes stung suddenly. She looked down at Samuel to steady herself. His lashes fluttered, cheeks slowly losing their alarming blotchy red in the fire's glow. The tea burned all the way down, but Nora held onto the mug like a tether. Jameson ladled stew into bowls and set one in front of her without ceremony, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world to feed a stranger who'd nearly frozen at a depot. May took her own bowl to the seat across from Nora, where she could see both woman and child with one sweeping glance. Jameson sat near the corner of the table, close enough to help if needed, far enough not to crowd. "Eat," May commanded. "Then talk, if you've got breath for it." The stew smelled of beef and onions and thyme. Nora's stomach cramped with longing. She hesitated only long enough to whisper a reflexive thank you, then lifted the spoon. The first bite nearly undid her. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth flood numb places inside her. She had forgotten what it felt like to simply eat without calculation, without counting what was left, without wondering if this bite meant hunger tomorrow. "Where were you headed?" Jameson asked after a time, voice quiet. Nora opened her eyes. He wasn't staring hard, just watching, elbows on the table, big hands wrapped around his own bowl, as though he needed its warmth as much as she did. "West," she said. "Any ranch or town that'd have me." She managed a humorless huff. "Turns out, train lines don't care where a body wants to go, only where the ticket says they're paid to stop." "Where'd you come from?" May asked. "A town called Red Willow," Nora replied. "You won't know it. Nobody does unless they're born there or stuck there." She traced a knot in the wood grain with her thumb. "My husband, Daniel, worked a little patch of land outside town. Drought took our crops. Fever took him." She said it flat because if she gave the words weight, they'd drag her under. May's mouth softened. Jameson's gaze dropped for a heartbeat. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Nora shrugged with one shoulder. "Sorry doesn't bring him back," she said. But there was no anger in it, only tired truth. "After he died, the bank man came, ledger in hand. Said the land wasn't ours anymore." Her lips twisted. Town women feel sorry for a widow, right up until they worry she might start looking toward their husbands for help. Then the looks change. Doors close quicker. Jameson nodded slowly, as if none of this surprised him. "So you took what you could carry and boarded a train." "There was a notice at the depot," Nora said. "Ranches out this way hiring help." "I thought," she swallowed. "I thought maybe someone could use a woman who can cook, and keep accounts better than most men. I thought if I didn't leave, I'd—" She trailed off. "Drift," May supplied gently. Nora blinked. "Yes," she whispered. "Just drift." They sat with that word a moment, the fire popping softly in the grate. "And you?" Nora asked then, surprising herself. "What made you ride into town on a night like this? You don't look like a man who lives at a depot." May hid a smile in her tea. Jameson sighed, the sound like a door creaking open on an old room. "Had business," he said. "Paperwork with the rail office. Shipment of seed coming in next week." His gaze slid away toward the window, where snow still smeared the night. I was engaged once. She hated this kind of weather, hated the quiet. One corner of his mouth lifted briefly. Said it felt like the sky was pressing on her chest. What happened? Nora asked softly. City happened. May cut in, not unkindly. Some folks hear the whistle and only think of leaving, not visiting. Lila was one of them. Jameson's jaw flexed. She wanted more than cows and fences, he said. More than cooking for two tired ranch hands and a man who comes home smelling like the barn. He traced the rim of his bowl with a thumb. Can't say I blame her for wanting something else. But she took half my savings and left a ring on the porch rail without so much as a goodbye. Nora's chest tightened. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. He gave a small, one-shouldered shrug. Been 2 winters since, he said. Land doesn't care whether your heart's broke. Cows still need feeding. Snow still needs shoveling. Hands still need paying. May reached across and nudged his arm with the back of her fingers. He won't tell you this, she said to Nora. But he kept setting an extra plate for months. Habits got nowhere to go when a person leaves. Jameson shot her a look that held more affection than annoyance. May, he warned. What? She replied. Woman deserves to know she's not the only soul in this house that's been left out in the weather. Nora looked from one to the other, something warm and painful unfurling in her chest. I didn't come here to stir up old hurt, she said. You've already done more than. You came here so your boy wouldn't freeze, May said briskly. Rest of it is the Lord's weaving, not yours. You're not that powerful. To Nora's shock, a laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep. It escaped before she could smother it, small and shaky but real. May grinned, satisfied. That's better, she said. You laugh. You remember you're still alive. For that night, Nora slept in the small room off the kitchen. Walls rough but clean, bed piled high with quilts that smelled faintly of lavender and smoke. Samuel lay in a crate padded with blankets beside her. His tiny fist curled near his cheek. She woke 3 times, heart pounding, sure someone would be standing in the doorway to tell her it was a mistake, that the room wasn't hers, that the warmth cost more than she could pay. Each time, only the soft glow of banked coals and Samuel's quiet breathing answered. By morning, she smelled coffee and heard low voices through the door. She sat up slowly, joints protesting, and felt something unfamiliar. Her body wasn't braced. She was still tired. Grief still lay heavy on her ribs. But some part of her that had been clenched tight for months had loosened. She dressed carefully, smoothing her worn skirts with her palms, then lifted Samuel, who blinked at her with sleepy blue eyes that were all Daniel's. We'll only stay until we're in the way, she murmured to him, though the promise hurt even as she said it. Then we'll move on. We always do. In the kitchen, May stood at the stove, flipping something in a skillet. Jameson sat at the table with a ledger open, coffee cup near his elbow. Morning, May called without turning. Coffee's there, mug by the pot. Sit before you fall. Jameson looked up. His gaze flicked to Samuel and softened. How'd he do? He asked. Better than I did, Nora admitted. May chuckled. Baby's got that gift, she said. Break your heart by being helpless. Save your life by needing you. Nora poured coffee with careful hands. I can help, she said quickly. Chopping, washing, mending. I don't sit idle. May snorted. Bless you, girl. If you'd come in here and said you intended to sleep till noon and let us serve you like some hotel, I'd have handed you back to the snow. She slid a plate of eggs and fried potatoes onto the table. Eat first. Then we'll see what you can do and how much of my stove I trust you with. Jameson shut the ledger and leaned back slightly. I'm heading into town by midday, he said. Need supplies. We can send a wire to the rail office or wherever you meant to go. The words pricked, sharp and sudden. Nora stared at her plate. Her throat closed. He seemed to realize how it sounded. I don't mean to push you out, he added quickly. Only, if you had somewhere you were aiming for, we can help you get there. I didn't, she said quietly. Not really. Just anywhere that would take us. Somewhere that wasn't Red Willow. Silence settled a moment. May broke it with the brisk scrape of a chair. Then until the good Lord drops a map in the middle of my biscuit dough, she said. You're here. We need hands. You need a roof. Seems to me that's good arithmetic. Nora lifted her gaze slowly. I can't pay, she whispered. Did you not just hear the woman? May replied. We need help. This isn't a charity house. It's a ranch with more work than 2 people and a baby can manage alone. You do what you can. We do what we can. That's called living. Jameson nodded once, supporting that verdict. If you want it, he said, meeting Nora's eyes. There's work here. Wages. Not much but honest. Enough to keep you and Samuel in food and cloth, and some to put by. Her heart lurched. Security, however modest, felt almost dangerous, like standing near a ledge. You don't know anything about me, she said. He held her gaze. I know you walked into a winter night for the chance to earn your living, he said. That tells me plenty. Nora looked down at Samuel, who chose that moment to let out a small, hopeful coo. She breathed in slowly, out slowly. All right, she said. If you're sure. I'll work. I'll pay my way. May clapped her hands once, decisive. Good, she said. Then finish your breakfast. We've got a full day of proving it ahead. Days lengthened into a rhythm. Nora learned the quirks of May's kitchen, the way the oven ran hotter near the back, how the bread rose best on the shelf by the east window, which pan Jameson favored for cornbread and never said out loud. She darned socks and mended shirts until the mending basket shrank. She learned which board on the porch creaked loudest and how to step lightly around it when Samuel finally slept. Jameson rose before dawn most days, leaving the house with the gray light. Nora watched him through the window sometimes, broad shoulders against the snow, hat pulled low, coat dark against the pale world, as he headed for the barn and the long list of tasks that never seemed done. He always paused at the top of the steps and glanced back toward the window, as if checking the light was still there. Her light. The thought struck one morning and made her cheeks warm. In the evenings, after Samuel was down and the supper dishes were done, she sat at the table with May and Jameson. May quilted, needle flashing through scraps of cloth. Jameson went over his ledgers by lamplight, tracing numbers with a pencil worn to a nub. Sometimes, silence was their companion, a comfortable one. Other nights, words slid out slowly, like rocks tumbled smooth by a river. Daniel used to hum when he worked, Nora said once, staring at the flame. Little tunes his ma taught him. The house felt empty when that stopped. Lila hummed too, Jameson replied quietly, though she didn't know the words to half the songs. She'd make up new ones when she forgot. May snorted softly. I remember, she said. Woman sang like a lark and cooked like the Lord hadn't invented salt. Nora laughed, the sound a little startled. Jameson's mouth curved. Guess we all lost things we thought we'd keep. May went on. Question is what we do with the hands we've got left. Nora's fingers brushed Samuel's blanket where it lay draped over the cradle beside her chair. Try not to drop what's still left, she murmured. Or, Jameson said slowly, learn to hold something new without thinking you're taking what doesn't belong to you. His eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Soft, uncertain, but undeniably there. The snow eased by late February. Ruts turned to mud. Wagons rolled more readily, and the town of Hollow Creek shook off its winter stiffness and returned to its usual rhythm of commerce and chatter. May needed flour, sugar, and coffee. Jameson needed fence wire and nails. Nora needed thread and a pair of shoes that didn't leak. They hitched the wagon and went together, Samuel bundled up in a basket lined with wool in the back. Town folks are like chickens, May warned as they rattled down the road. They see something new in the yard and suddenly nobody can mind their own scratching. You keep your chin where it belongs. No higher, no lower. Nora swallowed, fingers clenched around her shawl. They'll know, she said. They always know when someone doesn't belong. Jameson, holding the reins, shook his head. They'll know what you let 'em. he replied mildly. My business is my business. If they got questions about who's living under my roof, they can ask me. Her heart stuttered at the quiet claim hidden in those words. Living under my roof. The general store bell jingled as they entered. Old Mr. Harris, the storekeeper, glanced up, his eyes going automatically to Jameson first. Morning, Cole, he greeted. Got that wire you ordered last month. Took its time getting here. Jameson nodded. Appreciate you setting it aside. Harris's gaze slid past him then, landing on Nora. On her plain dress, mended now but still showing its age. On Samuel's basket as May set it gently on the counter. And who's this? He asked, tone casual in a way that wasn't casual at all. Nora Hayes, May said before Nora could open her mouth. She's helping me with the house and not falling on my face in the yard. This is Samuel, who has more hair than sense at the moment. Samuel chose that second to gurgle and wave both fists. Harris peered in, lips thinning just enough for Nora to see. Ward's place already full up with hands, wives, and kids, he said. Didn't know you were taking more in, Cole. She's not a charity case, Jameson replied evenly, stacking the wire on the counter. She's working for her keep, the way folks used to. I didn't say she was anything, Harris said. Just that town's small. People see a young widow set up at your place. They'll notice. People have eyes, Jameson said. Doesn't mean they got to put them in other folks' windows. May hid a smile in her handkerchief. Harris grunted and turned away to fetch coffee beans. The comments kept coming, in softer tones and sharper eyes. At the fabric counter, a pair of women whispered behind bolts of calico. She's the one from the depot, isn't she? The young mother. Living out there with Cole, they say. Nearest woman his age for miles, and she just happens to land in his arms on a winter night. Nora's cheeks burned. Her fingers clenched on the spool of thread she'd come for. She knew how quickly such talk could curdle into suspicion. She'd felt its sour weight in Red Willow. May straightened, turning just enough to fix the women with a stare. You two need something for all that whispering? She asked briskly. I've got soap here. Might help wash out whatever's making your tongues itch. One of the women sniffed. We were just saying it's unusual is all, she replied. A young widow man like Jameson all that time under one roof. People might wonder. They can wonder till their eyes water, May said. Makes no difference to what's true. And the truth is, that woman works from sunup to sundown, and Jameson Cole wouldn't lay a finger on a woman who didn't put it there herself first. If your God's got a problem with folks not freezing to death at train depots, you take it up with him. I'll be sleeping fine. Nora stared at the floor, mortified and weirdly grateful all at once. On the ride home, she was very quiet. Let em talk, May muttered from the back, rocking Samuel's basket with her foot. Talk doesn't change what's in your heart or your house. Nora wasn't so sure. The next week, it got worse. A ranch hand came back from town with news, smirking as he helped stack hay. Seems half the ladies in Hollow Creek think Jameson's finally got himself a woman, he said. Talk as he fished her out of a snowbank and carried her off like some storybook. The hands laughed. It was a teasing joke to them, nothing more. Men's talk passing the time. But Nora heard it from the kitchen window, and the words sank like stones. Got himself a woman. Carried her off. Like she'd been nothing but a prize found on sale. That night, while May and Jameson talked quietly about feed prices and spring planting, Nora stared at the fire and felt shame creep up her throat like rising smoke. After dishes, she stepped outside for air, shawl wrapped tight. The yard lay under a hard crust of old snow, sparkling faintly under a rising moon. Footsteps approached behind her. Jameson's. You all right? He asked, voice low. She nodded, not trusting her voice. You've been quieter than usual, he pressed gently. Something on your mind? She laughed without humor. Only every tongue in Hollow Creek, she said. Nothing big. He came to stand beside her, hands in his coat pockets. They been talking again, he guessed. That's what small towns do, she said. Gossip is cheaper than coal. Warms them up just as much. He was silent a moment. "Does it bother you so much what they say?" he asked. "It bothers me what it might cost you," she replied, turning to face him. "You're standing. Your name. People trust you. They might not if they think you've brought some stray home to warm your bed." Pain flashed across his face, brief but unmistakable. "Is that what you think?" he asked quietly. "That you're just some stray?" She winced. "You know I don't. But I know how it looks to folks who don't care what's true. I carry enough loss without adding yours to it. Maybe I should." Her throat worked. "Maybe I should find somewhere else." The thought of leaving stabbed her even as she spoke it. Leaving the kitchen where Samuel gurgled while May baked. Leaving the porch where she watched Jameson come home at dusk, shoulders tired but eyes soft. Leaving the only place that had felt like more than borrowed shelter in a long time. Jameson's jaw tightened. "You think leaving'll shut their mouths?" he asked. "It won't. They'll just have a new story about the woman who came and went. About why. Folks who want to gossip will always find a way." He stepped closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that his warmth cut the chill in the air. "I don't care what they say," he went on. "I care that Samuel's cheeks aren't blue anymore when he sleeps. I care that May laughs more now than she did in 2 winters. I care that when I come in from the ranch, there's a light in the window that's not just a lamp." Her breath hitched. "But what if this isn't meant to last?" she whispered. "What if I'm holding on to something that was never supposed to be mine? Your life, your home." He drew a slow breath. "Lila left because this life wasn't what she wanted," he said. "Not because I wasn't enough. Took me a long time to understand the difference." He swallowed. "I won't let Hollow Creek's gossip make you think you don't belong in a place you've already bled and sweated to keep running." Nora wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of taking more than my share of good. Of believing I might be allowed to stay. And I'm scared," he said softly, "that you'll leave because some fool with more tongue than sense made you feel unworthy of the first real peace you've had in months." They stood there, 2 people bruised by different pasts, sharing the same cold yard and the same thin slice of moonlight. Neither had the right words to patch it all in that moment. But sometimes heartbreak doesn't come from shouting matches or slammed doors. Sometimes it's simpler. A woman lying awake that night, staring at the rafters, thinking maybe she should start packing what little she had. A man sitting at the kitchen table, hands around a cold cup of coffee, wondering if he'd dared hope too much too soon. It was May who caught her. 3 days later, before dawn had fully broken, Nora crept into the kitchen with her shawl already on and Samuel bundled tight to her chest. A small bundle sat by the door, the sum of her life, shrunken to what she could carry. She reached for the latch, hand shaking. "Don't," May said quietly from the shadowed corner. Nora jumped, heart pounding. May sat at the table in her nightdress and shawl, hands wrapped around a mug. Her hair was still braided, gray plait hanging over one shoulder. I thought you were asleep," Nora stammered. "Women my age don't sleep," May replied. "We rest our eyes and listen to our houses breathe. Sit down, child." "I have to go," Nora said, throat thick. "Before I make more trouble. Before people start saying worse things." "Worse than what?" May asked. "Worse than that Jameson Cole took in a widow and her baby and gave him food? Worse than they already said when he lost Lila. Like it was his fault she didn't like dirt under her shoes?" Nora's eyes filled. "I heard what the hands said," she whispered. "How they laughed. How they think I'm some convenience you found. Some of those boys would trip over their own boots if you asked them to count past 20. May said. "You're going to rebuild your whole life on their wisdom?" Nora's hand tightened on the shawl. "I can't bear the thought that I might ruin the only stable thing he has left," she said. "His name, this ranch. If I stay, people will talk more. They'll say he brought in one woman, then another." May leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Listen to me," she said. "That boy out there," she jerked her chin toward the bunkhouse and barn, "has been lonely in ways you don't know. He was ready to build a life once. Got left like yesterday's paper. Since then, This house has been too quiet, too tidy, like somebody lived in it, but nobody lived from it. She softened. Since you and Samuel came, he's different. Less like a man just doing chores until the Lord calls him. More like someone who remembers there's a reason to come back from the barn besides sleep. Nora's heart pinched. I don't know how to be anything other than trouble, she said. Everywhere I go, something breaks. Daniel's health, the crops, the bank papers. Now Jameson's peace. May snorted. You didn't break any of those, she said. Life did. You just happened to be standing nearby. She rose, joints popping, and came around to lay a hand on Nora's shoulder. If you're so set on leaving, at least have the decency to tell the man straight to his face. Don't sneak out like a thief. That's not the woman I've watched these weeks. Shame flared hot across Nora's cheeks. She hadn't thought of it that way. She'd thought of it as mercy. I don't know what he'd say, she whispered. Only one way to find out, May said. I'll put coffee on. You wake him, and if either of you start shouting, I'll sweat you both with the broom. Despite everything, a weak laugh escaped Nora. May squeezed her shoulder. Go on, she said. If you're going to break a man's heart, let him at least be awake for it. Jameson stood on the porch, coat thrown over his shoulders, hair mussed from sleep. He'd answered Nora's tentative knock on his bedroom door with a simple, gruff, yeah, and stepped out into the rising light when she asked to talk. Now they faced each other, breath steaming in the cold. You're leaving, he said quietly, eyes dropping to the bundle by the door. I thought I should, Nora replied, fingers tight around Samuel's blanket. Before I made more problems for you. He stared at her, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Is that what you think you've been? He asked. A problem? I've heard what people say, she said. In town. Here. How it looks. A widowed man. A young mother under his roof. They twist kindness into something else. I can't stand the thought that, because of me, they'll think less of you. What other people think of me is not your burden, he said. And if they're willing to throw away years of knowing my character over a few front porch stories, that says more about them than me. Her throat burned. You don't understand, she whispered. In Red Willow, when Daniel died and the bank took the farm, people stopped seeing me as Nora and started seeing me as a cautionary tale, or a threat. Their pity turned sour. I can't go through that again. Not here. Not where it might splash on you too. He took a step closer. You're not in Red Willow, he said. You're here, at my ranch, under my roof, with my say. She shook her head, tears spilling now. It's not just the talk, she said. It's me. I don't know how to believe I deserve this. Warmth, food, someone asking how I slept. Every time I sit at that table, a part of me waits for somebody to come in and say, we count it again. You've had more than your share of good. Time to go back to your sorrow. Jameson's eyes shone, though no tears fell. I know that feeling, he said hoarsely. After Lila left, every decent day felt like cheating, like I'd stolen joy off somebody else's plate. Took me 2 years of emptiness to realize the Lord doesn't ration kindness like coffee beans. He reached out, stopped, then let his hand rest lightly on her arm, carefully above Samuel's head. You're not a burden, he said. You're a blessing I didn't expect. She swallowed, searching his face. You barely know me, she whispered. His lips quirked. I know you get up before dawn when Samuel cries, even when May tells you to sleep. I know you hum when you need bread and pretend you don't. I know you stood up to Harris at the store more with your steady stare than most men would with fists. I know that when you laugh, May laughs too. And this house feels a little less like a barn with beds in it and more like a home. His voice softened further. I know that every time I ride back from the fields and see smoke coming from this chimney, I think, they're there. They're warm. And my shoulders drop 3 inches. Her breath caught at the rawness of it. I can't ask you to stay, she said, voice trembling. Not if it costs you. You can, he interrupted gently. You just don't want to. You're used to leaving before anyone has the chance to love you enough that it hurts when you go. The word slid between them and hung there. Love. He didn't snatch it back. I don't know how to be anybody's wife anymore, she confessed suddenly. The woman Daniel married died with him, I think. What's left is different, tired, scraped thin. I don't need the woman Daniel married, he said. I need the woman standing in front of me, who carried her child through winter and loss and still has enough heart left to worry about my name in town. He drew a shaky breath. Nora Hayes, I'm not asking you to repay a debt. I'm asking if you'd consider making this. He glanced back at the door, the house. Yours too, not as a guest. As someone who belongs here. Her heart thundered against her ribs. You mean Mary? She whispered. He nodded once. In time, he said. Not tomorrow. Not next week. We'll take it slow. You've had one life ripped out from under you. I've had one future walk away. We won't rush another into place. A faint smile touched his mouth. But I'd like to walk toward it. With you. If you'll let me. She stared at him, everything inside her trembling. Behind the windows, she could imagine May hovering with her ear to the glass, hands wringing her apron. Samuel shifted in the crook of her arm, making a soft, questioning sound. He already thinks this is home, Jameson said, nodding to the baby. You hear how he sleeps here? Like he's finally found a roof that doesn't creak with every breath. Seems to me the good Lord's already halfway answered a prayer you're too afraid to voice. Nora looked down at her son's face, at the soft curve of his mouth, relaxed in sleep. She had promised Daniel she would not drift. She had not known the promise would lead her to a man who spoke about her like a blessing instead of a burden. Slowly, as if testing a limb she hadn't used in a long time, she nodded. I don't know how to do this, she said honestly. To stay, to believe this isn't just a pause before the next disaster. We'll learn together, he said. One day at a time, one fence post, one loaf of bread, one bedtime story for Samuel. His hand slid carefully from her arm to her cheek, calloused thumb brushing away a tear. And when the next hard thing comes, and it will, we'll face it standing side by side. Not you on some depot bench and me wondering if I could have done more. She laughed then, a wet, wobbly sound that mingled with a sob. You talk like a preacher, she teased weakly. He smiled, eyes warm. I talk like a man who's had enough of watching good things freeze at the edge of his land, he said. Then, softly, he added the words that had started it all. Ma'am, come in out of the cold. This time she heard everything he meant behind them. Not just the winter wind, the cold of being unseen, unwanted, unmoored. She stepped toward him, toward the door, toward May's knowing eyes, toward a future that wasn't yet shaped but could be. All right, she whispered. I'll stay. Spring came slower out on the plains, but it came. Mud replaced snow. Grass nudged through frost. Calves bawled in the pasture. Samuel learned to sit up and drum his hands on the table, and Nora's laughter came easier, more often. Some days were still hard. Grief still visited, unannounced, for both of them. She had days when Daniel's memory felt too close to touch, when guilt nipped at her for smiling with another man. He had days when catching sight of Lila's old scarf at the back of a drawer twisted something in his gut. On those days they didn't pretend. They talked quietly, or they sat together in silence, shoulders almost touching on the porch steps, sharing coffee and the view. Hollow Creek kept talking too, as towns do. But time has a way of dulling old news when no new scandal feeds the fire. They saw the pair come to church together, baby in arms, sitting on the pews like any other small family. They saw Jameson tip his hat to Nora with an ease that said he didn't care who watched. They saw May puffed up with unhidden pride, scowling at anyone who seemed inclined to poke. Maybe it's not what we thought, one of the Calico women muttered eventually. Maybe it's better, the other admitted grudgingly, watching Samuel grab Jameson's nose after the service and elicit a rare, full-bodied laugh from the man. Either way, tongues slowly turned to other topics. Life on the ranch settled into a pattern that felt less like borrowed time and more like living. The day they made it formal came on a gentle Sunday in early summer. Buttercups scattered across the pasture like spilled sunlight. The preacher from Hollow Creek stood by the big oak near the house, Bible in hand, hat tipped back to catch the breeze. May cried outright, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief she'd sworn she wouldn't need. Samuel, now nearly a year old, clapped at the birds and tried to eat Jameson's boutonniere. Nora wore a simple cream dress May had helped her alter from an old one in the attic. Her hair was braided and pinned up, a few wisps escaping around her face. She felt like someone else and entirely herself all at once. "You sure?" Jameson asked her quietly before the preacher began. "Last chance to run. Trails are clear this time of year." She smiled up at him, heart full. "I've done enough running," she said. "I'm ready to stand still. With you." The ceremony was short. Words about love and patience and the Lord's mercy. Vows that sounded almost too big in their mouths. But right when it was done, when Jameson kissed her lightly in front of God and May and the preacher and a couple of curious hands, Nora felt something settle inside her. Not the end of fear, but the beginning of belonging. Later that night, after Samuel finally fell asleep in his little crib, and May went to bed with a satisfied sigh, Nora and Jameson sat at the kitchen table with their hands wrapped around mugs of coffee gone lukewarm. The lamplight softened the lines on his face. He reached across the table, palm up. She placed her hand in his. "Remember the depot?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I remember the cold," she said, "and how everyone pretended not to see." He squeezed her fingers lightly. "I'd been there before," he said. "Not that station, but close enough. People stepping around my hurt so they didn't have to feel it. I decided that night I wasn't going to be one of them. Not again." She lifted their joined hands and pressed his knuckles to her cheek. "You weren't," she said. "You saw me when I'd nearly convinced myself I'd disappeared." He smiled, the kind of smile that starts in the eyes and works its way down. "And now?" he asked. "You still feel invisible?" She glanced around the kitchen. At the quilt draped over the chair, mid-stitch. At the little pile of wooden blocks Jameson had carved for Samuel. At the ledger on the shelf with 2 sets of handwriting now, his slanted script and her neat numbers. "No," she said. "Now I feel seen. And safe." He drew her gently from her chair to his, tucking her against his chest. She rested her head under his chin, listening to his heartbeat. Outside, the wind moved through the grass. No longer a threat, just a sound. He tightened his arms around her, like a man anchoring something precious that had once been adrift. Everyone ignored the freezing young mother at the train depot. He murmured, words half to her, half to himself. "But I'm glad the Lord put my boots on that platform that night." She smiled into his shirt. "I'm glad you said what you did," she replied. "Those words stayed with me even when I wanted to leave." He kissed the top of her head. "Ma'am," he said, that same rough warmth in his voice. "Come in out of the cold." She closed her eyes, letting the words wrap around her one more time. Not just a rescue this time, but a promise renewed. "I already did," she whispered, "and I'm not going back." Deep inside, in the place where winter had once lived, something steady and warm had taken root. It wasn't just shelter. It wasn't just gratitude. It was home.